All
Toby,
right.
welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, Victor.
I'm excited to have you on. I know we just had a wonderful chat a little over a week ago. They actually the roles were reversed. He was
Yeah.
interviewing me, and now I thought it'd be great to have him on. A wonderful individual. He's got that beautiful smile of his. If you're watching the video, and it's one of those things where Toby, my listeners, they kind of know how I kind of go with things. And the first thing is, what's your story, your journey that got you into doing what you're doing today?
Thank you so much for this wonderful question, Dr. Vic. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here. So my story basically is about, I'm an engineer by day and I call myself a podcaster by night. And my story has to do with, me, going through my bachelor degree, going through my master degree, but something was still lacking in my life, basically. Like I come originally from Nigeria. I'm based in Germany, and I, struggled all year long to achieve my degree in a foreign land, learn the language. And I noticed that there was still something missing. I was still having, some empty boxes to be filled up in my life, and that's what led me even to starting the podcast because I thought about, it's wanting to achieve academic success and career success, but there are a lot of other things that has to do with life, like personal growth in terms of spirituality, in terms of relationships and all that. And that led me into, looking and sorting out for, knowledge from experts, from people who have experienced a lot of things in life in order to build myself also in terms of relationship, finance, and also make myself a much more, rounder person, basically, and a much more built up person in every area of life and not just academical and career ways.
I love that. And your name of your podcast is Mirror Talks. Tell me a little bit about why did you choose that as a title for the name of your podcast?
Yes. So, um, long time before starting the podcast, I always find myself standing in front of the mirror, speaking to myself, basically. So that was like one of the reasons why I started the podcast and why I named it Mirror Talk, because I always like discussions and talk stuff that I can't talk about with other people. I don't feel comfortable talking about with other people. I find myself just while brushing my teeth or combing my hair, just talking about it to myself, being genuine, 100% raw with myself in front of the mirror. So when I got the inspiration to start a podcast, I had this inspiration, motivation to also have conversations in which everything is being placed on the table, where there's nothing is being sugar coated, and in which people could listen to this soulful, wonderful conversation and have a reflection on their own lives, just as if they are looking at the mirror, basically, and seeing their life story, seeing their own life experience through other people's story, through other people's experiences, and also finding ways to adjust or maybe improve their own lives through other people's experiences. That's why I call the Mirror Talk podcast.
I love that. I mean, because to me, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, this is great. Everyone has their mirror talk. It could be in their head. It could be actually with a mirror. But it's that inner communication with oneself. I thought that was very critical in a lot of ways because again we all do it. I do it myself. I'll look in the mirror and I'll just give myself a little, sometimes I give myself a pep talk. A lot of times I do it internally, but it's one of those things where it's critically important, and my listeners know this, where it's like that conversation with self is so valuable, so critical in so many ways,
Yes.
because if you don't have, depending on that, I always say, would you ever date yourself on the way you talk about yourself or how you view yourself? It's one of those questions I love to ask.
Yes, exactly. I know exactly as you said already, like having that personal, critical conversation with yourself, or real conversation or real talk with yourself, basically. Like like you said, will you marry yourself or date yourself? I also have that kind of conversation myself. Like, okay, Toby, you messed up in this area, as in this is what you're supposed to do, right? This is what you're not supposed to do, or this is how you should have done it instead. So those kind of conversations I always have it with myself without being judgmental or without having that fear that anybody around me will look at me or look down at me, basically. So yeah, that's the importance of having this reflective discussion, mirror talk, not necessarily with a physical mirror, but as you said, also could be with your just internally, just internally, just going through your everything that you've gone through in life and trying to find a way forward, basically.
So, how do you share how to break through that negative self talk? What are things that you use or a tool or something to kind of stop that process that we all have?
Yes. So one thing I learned in my journey so far to stop negative thoughts is being grateful for the little things or for the positive things in my life, no matter how little they might be. Like in a lot of experiences in life where things go wrongly or things go south basically. If no matter how challenging it might be, no matter how difficult it is, I always try to be grateful for at least a situation, at least for the ability to be alive, the ability to experience such situation in life, basically. And that way, it's automatically helps me to get out of this negative thought that goes through my mind. Like whenever, for example, going through a bad experience and wondering, oh, what's the essence of life? Why am I still existing when I'm when I'm expressing such a bad situation that's so unfavorable and so unconducive, then I start remembering, there are a lot of people that would kill basically to be where I am right now. And that way I switch from being so regretful to being grateful for being at that situation and for being able to have a lesson to learn from that situation also. And that way the negative thoughts just disappear.
Yeah, I think that's powerful because it's in is it just something that you just shift your perspective? I mean, it's just something that you've over time because like there's some people that you'll see they have a hard thing that happens and then they just keep seeking like they complain about the more and more of these things and it's just like that becomes their life. And then you have other people like you're sharing where it's like they may go through a hardship, but they'll sit there and go, you know what though? But there's got to be something good that's going to come out of this. There's got to be something I'm grateful, or like you were saying, right? You used a perspective shift where it's like, well, how
Yeah.
many people would kill to be where I'm at right now? Well, there would be a lot of people there. So guess what? Then I should be a little bit more grateful for where I'm at, even though I'm not liking the moment.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have learned? How did you shift? How did you learn that process? Was it just a belief system to know that things just get better, or what was it that kind of made you go like, this is what I'm going to do, or this is why I'm going to do this?
Yes. So as you said already, it's like having that perspective switch basically that I do. And what's one thing that helps me also is the fact that I see the positive part of it. Like I also write. I'm a writer. I do journaling also sometimes. And whenever I experience something bad or whenever I'm having bad thoughts, I always look at it from a positive side and say, oh, this could be an opportunity to write something great. This could be like I'm going to try my best to get out of this situation, out of this bad thought, so that I could pass across this message to someone else, so that I could teach somebody else about this. And in one way or the other, this person might not, have to go through what I'm going through right now. So I always see every every bad thought, every bad situation as an opportunity to have something to pass across to someone else to prevent whosoever that is from going through what I am going through at the moment also. And that way, I see that I just see all those situations as a tool. I see all those bad thoughts as a tool to push forward. And one thing also that helps is, apart from having mirror talk, is having conversation with a trusted friend, for example, with a mentor who is who you trust and depend on, who you know will not judge you. And that way, sometimes when I'm having bad thoughts, I just pour everything out to the trusted friend, and the friend is always have the ability to push my thoughts back from being negative to looking at the positive side, at point when I find it very, very difficult to actually see the positive part of the situation.
I love how you bring up friends and stuff because this is something where I want we could definitely dive into, and that is, a lot of times in your environment dictates you and your growth and who you are, right? So, like, if you're,
Yeah.
for an example, if you take, have you ever seen an oak tree before, Toby?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Right, they're big, beautiful
Mm,
trees, right?
mm.
But
Yes.
here's how our environment dictates us in a sense. Because if we put a seed in a small pot, an oak tree seed, and put it in a
Mm,
small pot, the tree is only going to grow to the max of what the roots can grow in that pot.
yeah.
And it's what you brought up too. It's how important then is it to have a circle of friends or just a group of people that you have to help depend on, because it's like, what if your friend is more about being in the victimhood side, right? Rather
Mm,
than empowering you or supporting you, they feed on that. So like, for example, like you go through a hard time and this friend goes, that sucks. It's not your fault. It's their fault. It's because of them. It's because of the system. It's because of this. It's because of that. How important is it to, and if you have a process, how do you select those friends or have those people around you to have that audience, or I shouldn't say audience, it's your circle of trust, if you want to call it, to be selective in those choices to choose.
That's true. Yeah. And it's very, very important to have a circle of friends, like you said already. One thing that came to my mind when you were talking about this is also sometimes you might think or believe that, I don't have friends around me to discuss with, or this circle of people. And like you said correctly, well already, the environment also determines like how big the oak tree will be. And one way we could define our environment, from my own experiences, also providing ourselves or surrounding ourselves with the right materials to support us through any situations. Like listening to your podcast, for example, or listening to Mirror Talk podcast, for example, or following people on social media that could help you, like self-care pages on Instagram or on Twitter. And when you are going through, when you're having this harmful or negative thoughts, and you just randomly open Instagram, the first 5 posts you see are very, motivating and very inspiring posts that could, push you out of this dark space of yours. That's one thing that really helped me also, like, or watching YouTube videos like this one that will be posted on YouTube also. And then you are listening to other people's story that have gone through way worse things than you have gone through. And that way you get pushed out of your own negative thoughts, and then you learn from them. And then that way, for me, it's like creating a virtual environment for myself most times when I find it difficult to speak with my circle of friends also.
I love how you bring that up, because it brings up a story of myself where when I was growing up, I didn't have mentors to guide me to the success of where I wanted to go. And so then at that time, I didn't have social media as it is today, but I would just get books. I would just try to figure out who is someone that, it has a life that I'm looking for. And then I just start studying their life or what they teach or what they do. And I would take them on as like, they're my mentors. There's so many people who are mentors of mine that they don't even know that they're mentors of mine because of that process. But you brought up a great point where in today's society, this is things that, I always call it the guardians of the mind. How are you guarding the information that you process? Right. And, it's one of those things where you're bringing up things of what can I feed my brain that can be good, so that it keeps me centered, it keeps me moving forward rather than retracting back. And I love that. There's so much out there in today's world, like podcasts, for example, or YouTube videos, or you can watch Instagram or Facebook and go through following people that you like. It's kind of cool how the algorithm works, because it all pays attention. You get more of what you spend more time on. And it's like I tell people all the time, go spend time more on people's stuff that you enjoy, that you find inspirational. And all of a sudden, over time, you'll start to see only that information and nothing else.
Exactly. That's true. That's very true. And that's one thing that helped me to also, like in dark phases of mine. Yeah, following inspiring people on social media helped me a lot. Like even when I'm so reluctant to check Instagram, and I say, okay, I'm just going to check for 5 minutes or so before laying down in bed, and I just read like 5 posts, and they're so motivational. I end up not lying down in bed, but standing up and doing something, or picking up my book to write. And one thing that I could also share also that I've been learning also from hosting or listening to having wonderful conversation with people on the podcast or Mirror Talk is that this importance of meditation, for example, or journaling, and all of these are ways that they act like as friends also to you, basically, like having that pen and paper and writing everything that is like you're speaking with your best friend, and your best friend is you, and when you write it down, your brain works on it or processes it in a way that you start finding answers to situations and start finding, light at the end of the dark tunnel, basically. Or when you meditate and have the ability, and you learn the ability to just let go of those harmful thoughts, you are being aligned, your body, spirit, and soul is being aligned together. And that's just like having friends also, internal friends also, to help you let go of those toxic thoughts and toxic situations too.
Love it. When you speak meditation, it's like speaking to my heart. It's something that I took on that practice over 15 years ago, and it's something that has, it's like my I call it in my when I work with clients, I talk a lot about like you got to have this sacred space time that you have to have. Some people call it power hour. Some people call it, there's so many names for it, but for me, it's just sacred space. And the reason why I like that term is because it's literally me going in, connecting with who I really am, ignoring all the noise of the world, everything that's going on in my life and others' lives in the world, and just being in the present and just soaking it up as much as I can. And then also like tapping into things because you can have, you get resources sometimes, you get information, you get, feelings and stuff that you can helps you what you want to do or grow or how you want to be.
Yes, yes. And talking about meditation and mental issues. Your book, A Walk in the Dark, like when we're having discussion about on Mirror Talk, A Walk in the Dark also talks about you embracing your dark part and connecting with the light. And for me, when I read through this book, for example, like the summary and everything and some part of the book, I got to understand that yes, no matter what we are going through in life, it's like a gift basically for us. It's a gift for our ministry. It's a gift for our purpose basically. And you're talking about books earlier. Actually, made me to remember your book also, the A Walk in the in the Dark. Having books like that also act as friends, act as companionship to push you through dark phases of life, and helps you also to reflect basically on your life. When you read a book like that and you read stories or listen to people's stories, also you have that ability to have that mirror in front of you to reflect about your life and become a better person, hopefully through the books you read and the conversations that you listen to.
I love that. And you bring up something that is kind of shares how we are as individuals and humans, in that the case is that we're all mirrors of one another. And that what that means is what you see in another, you have to see in yourself before, or you have to have within in order to see it. Because if you don't have it, then you can't. It's like a poor person can't grasp what $1 million lifestyle looks like. I mean, or have it. They just can't. It's such a vast difference. All they can see is poor and this, or they're gonna look at, well, money is just bad, and they'll look at it from that perspective. But to actually see that huge that difference, it's just a huge disconnect from be able to even grasp or see. But you bring up a point too. It's like, and you brought this up, you shared this earlier about perspective and shifting and looking at things from a different way. That's where, like, when it comes to like the book I wrote, it's one of those things where it's really designed to just, if we can all grasp our challenges as a blessing, it's a game changer for life. Like, there's no room for suffering. Like, if you really think about your life, and I'll think about my life, and it's one of those things, all the things of going through that process, all the dark times, when you look back later down the road, there's still not one person, and I'm going to ask you this, all the hardships that you've gone through, when you look back later down the road, because going through them is never fun, but later down the road, you look back, was it a curse or was it a blessing?
Yeah, I would say, or every hardship I went through in life, they are all blessings in different ways and forms. Like everything that I've gone through so far has shaped me, molded me to be who I am today. Like the old discipline or consistency or the old, skills that I've learned today or acquired today are based on the hardships, on the difficulties that I've gone through in life. Sometimes when I think about this, I think about, the process of making diamond or gold, for example. You have to go through that heat, go through that fire, go through that hardship to become gold and diamond that we all admire. And I also try to, compare myself to that or relate myself to that also, that any hardship I go through, whenever I'm in a situation also that is difficult, I say, oh yeah, maybe this is a fire and I'm going to turn out, to become much more beautiful than I was before, basically. Yeah.
I love that. I love using the diamond analogy because it relates to the darkness, because you have to dive. If you look at a diamond, it comes from coal and comes from all the pressure and the immense heat and all this stuff, but it's in complete darkness, and you have to go in and go through that process. And then when you work out through it on the other side, you become more magnificent, more beautiful than you can ever thought possible. From coal, you turn into a beautiful diamond.
That's very true.
And life's always there to pressure you in some way, shape, or form. It's like, sometimes, like when I first started coaching and working, I had my chiropractic office, but I was starting a new business with coaching for entrepreneurs at the time. And I remember when I wasn't getting clients, things were down. It wasn't like I wasn't having the conversations for potential clients. And I was like, man, what's going on here? Of course I get in my head for a little bit. And then I was like, a couple days later, I'm like, I was doing something, and it kind of got inspired to do it. And then after I look back and I go, if I didn't see the decline, if I didn't see the lack, if I didn't go through that experience, it would have not have pissed me off so much that I would have gotten energy from and said, you know what, I need to do this. And all of a sudden, it made me create this whole different thing. And all of a sudden, that was the next thing for me. And I was just like, that's crazy how this works. Like
Yeah.
it's fascinating. And still to this day, for all the listeners, I still get in my head. So don't think that I have this mastered. If things get short or shy, sometimes I'll still beat myself up. But it's just, it's just my drive in myself. But it's like, as yourself, like how do do you do journaling? Do you do journaling when you have when you have certain emotions? Do you do it for journaling to figure creativity, like to get new thoughts to come through? Is it for you to process something? I mean, because you can use journaling in so many ways. How do you utilize that journaling, especially when you have the heat of the volcano pressuring you to turn into a diamond?
Yes. Yeah. So I actually I'm trying to journal more than I used to before. But it's a very, very useful tool, like journaling. Like whenever one is going through a difficult situation and you pick up that pen and paper and you just, write down your thoughts and emotions, it helps a lot to process it. Like I'm working on it day by day also to improve my journaling. But one thing I do that is very creative with which other people could also do with difficult situations, or when I'm in fire, is writing of poems, or basically writing of writing of stories. Like I'll just scramble stories down, and that way I try to let go. I try to put everything I'm going through in the third person, in a character or something like that. And when I read it, I'm like, okay. It's like, creating a mirror for myself, basically, like drawing an image of myself and looking at myself from the paper and the ink that I've written, and trying to imagine, okay, so this is what I've gone through, right? And in a third person. And I will now judge myself like as an external being, like, just standing out of my body to look at what I'm going through in order to appreciate what I am going through at the moment, and to see that, yeah, there's a way ahead. So back to your question, I mean, journaling helps, but if there are other creative ways, like, just writing down stories, writing songs also. Like I was having a wonderful conversation with somebody on Mirror Talk. We were talking about, whenever we are going through fire, they use that opportunity to write new songs, for example, or write new stories, write new movie scripts, for example. And you just see that they just use that opportunity as like a tool, as a gift to create something new that could maybe make big records for them also. Yeah.
Love that, man. I love how you bring that up because, like, journaling, like, I don't journal as much as I used to, but I still use it once in a blue moon. And it's just to help me process to get out of my head. But I
Mm.
love how you shared, like, you were talking with someone about creating stories and, music and stuff like that, because that's where my first book came. When I wrote my first book, I was actually in intense pain from something my body was clearing out. It was in a healing process, but it was just old patterns that had to work themselves out. And it was interesting, though, because things like even that at that moment, I remember I didn't think I was going to be a chiropractor. I didn't know how, if this continued, I couldn't practice, and I would have to reconfigure everything. And in that process, I wrote a book, and even my coach was like, "I don't know how, with all the pain you had, how the hell did you do that?" And I was just like, I was determined. I had to do. It was one of my escapes, so that way I didn't have to focus so much on my business, making sure that stays stabilized while I'm trying to get myself back up to being 100%. And I just enjoyed the process, and through it, I wrote a book, and then I published it a couple months after. It was a couple months after and when I was done with the book and I was getting through the editing process, all my pain was gone.
Wow, that's
And I
beautiful.
laughed because I was like, how the heck did that happen? Because it was literally February 2018. And this is 2 months before I still launched my podcast, too. But it was one of the things where I remember I was like, I finished the book. As soon as I submitted to the editor, the next day, I was able to take walks again. And I was like full walks with no issues, no breaks. And I was just like, wow, I feel like something's different. And then a couple weeks later, I was back at the gym working out, and I was just like, "Holy cow!" Now I didn't associate it to the writing of the book, like, oh, I did the book, and then all of a sudden that happened. But it was just one of those things where you brought that up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that I've gone through that. I've done that."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting how the aspect of journaling. The one thing I love that you brought up is it gets yourself out of your head, it gets out of your way, and you can just
Mm.
be.
Yes. And even ask you a question, like at the beginning of, you're writing your book or starting a podcast, did you know that at a point of writing your book or when you are done writing your book, you get out of this bad situation that you went through? Did you have that assurance? Did you have that assurance or that hope?
That hope that I would get through the pain.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I always did because it was an 8-month process. So when it started, it was like, what the heck's going on? And
Mm.
then I started, being a chiropractor working with mine, and we were going back and forth looking at things. And then it's just, you put a plan together and you just go. Right. And in
Yeah.
chiropractic, it's very similar to business. It's not about treatments because you're not treating anything. Chiropractors don't treat pain, discomfort. We don't do any of that. We help
Mm.
the brain and the body communicate better. That's what I do. And over time, that's going to heal the body. So what's
Mm.
interesting is we just kept doing what we did. I supported my body for what it needed. Through the adjustments, through massage. I changed my diet around. I did some certain supplements to reduce my inflammation as much as possible. I started doing if I could, I do a little bit of some workouts. But in the back of my mind, I knew that I was eventually going to get better. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say I always thought that. There was a point like 5-6 months in where I was just like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. Like I've done everything I know, and yet I'm still here. And my coach at the time was like, well, what would you tell a patient? I said, I'll tell a patient that you're doing everything you can to support the body. The body will always heal itself. And it's just a matter, there's nothing here that's an emergency. We haven't seen anything that's an emergency. Because he's like, do you have to go to see an orthopedic? Do you have to go see this? I'm like, I have no signs and symptoms. I mean, I'm in pain, but it's like, I know why it's there. It's just,
Yeah.
I have to work. I don't know how long it's going to be before the body adapts to the new change.
Mhm.
And so, but yeah, it's deep down, I always had that process to know that it would always eventually work itself out.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Having that hope and that belief that everything will work out fine is good. And one thing I want to add to that is basically like sometimes when we take the time to pause and reflect, and this is one thing I used to say on the podcast too, like taking that time to pause and reflect, basically, when we find out like, oh, what am I? From my own example, using myself as an example, when we find out, okay, this is maybe what I am doing wrong, or maybe this is what I am not doing, and that is why I'm in this situation. Like for me, for example, like I said, like I had my degree already. I'm working also as an engineer up to now, but I knew that something was missing, and I took that time to pause and reflect that okay, I'm okay with my career. I'm doing good, but I'm not feeling complete yet. Okay. I sat down and I said, what is that thing that I really want to do? What is that thing that I'm not yet doing that could give me fulfillment, bring me fulfillment? So I took that time to reflect and I thought, yes, my passion is to have these, soulful conversations, to connect with people like you, Dr. Vic, for example, to, um, share this knowledge with also other people also. Then I took that step of just trying it out basically. And like you said, also, you know, taking little steps, learning the skills and dipping my legs into the waters of podcasting, I started having that belief that yes, by the time if I continue with this, I am going to become better. I'm going to feel much more fulfilled than I was on the day before I started recording also, or the day I started recording. Yeah.
I love that. And I love how you share that story because it's something that not a lot of people live, in a sense where they just do. And it's like they go in survival scarcity and then they just stay there and they don't really go after what fulfills them. Like it's very similar to I have a story like that where in my chiropractic office, I finally, I had a certain level I wanted to get to financially and success wise and so forth, materials and all that. And I got there and I was empty. I was stressed out and I was empty. And I was like, this can't be it. Like I worked so hard to get here and I'm here and I thought I'd be happy and I wasn't. And I took time. I actually took 3 months to I just was in my office. I do what I do. I love practicing. I love doing what I did there. But then I would take time to say, what really matters to me? Like, is it just going into an office, adjusting and leaving? Or is it really making changes in people's lives? And I started to look at what would change the future and make an indent into it. And so I had to really look at my practice, look at what I did. And I took a massive hit. I changed everything around. But then when things turned back and got to where I was less stressed. I was more fulfilled, happier. And, it was one of those things where it was like, you're doing what you love. And there's a substance to that that money, you can get all the money in the world. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about having money and making money, and because it helps me fulfill my purpose and mission in life more. But at the same token, there's just that substance that you can take with you after this life.
That's true.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, that's very true. Like pursuing your passion and things that make you fulfilled. They have greater value than just earning money.
So I didn't ask this earlier. I wanted to ask this really quick before we wrap up here. So what type of engineer are you?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer. Yes. But I studied electrical engineering and IT in the university for my master and bachelor, and yeah.
Very cool. So you as a software engineer, you can build. I'm assuming you build programming. You do programming, a lot of programming and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yes, I do. Yeah.
And when I first got when I was an undergrad, I was going into computer science at first, like computers, but then it was just the programming side. I was like, I can't sit here and work on a program for 6 hours. I'm a people person. I need to connect with people. Even though I come off as an extrovert, I'm really not. I'm actually an introvert. But I just I have to have conversation or connections. Those are very important to me. And me, as much as I love being on a computer, I didn't love it that much to sit on it for programming for that long. And I was just like, I got to shift this around somehow.
Yeah, I think I'm also quite introverted, so it was very, very suitable for me just to sit on my laptop and just program and submit my task and I'm done. But then there's a little part of me that enjoys conversations like this, like speaking with you, Dr. Vic. Like there's a little part of me that was hungry or yearning for that, attention basically at that point. I guess that's one of the reasons why I also started, wanting to have meaningful, soulful conversations with people too, because I had that little part of me that is not so introverted that wants to speak with people and connect with different people in life or network as I also. Yeah.
I love that. And that's one of the reasons why, sometimes you get asked this. I get asked this often where it's like, well, why did you start your podcast? And I'll be like, selfish reasons. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, selfish reasons. They're like, really? I was like, yeah. I go, where else am I going to meet people that I can have an opportunity to connect with, which I probably would never, like you're in Germany. I have never been to Europe. So it's like the chances, eventually I do want to go, but it's like the chances of making those connections in person. I was like, this is why I do podcasting. I've had interviews with people that there's people I've read all their books and stuff. Next, they're wanting to be on the podcast. And I'm like, this is cool. And I'll be like, I know all your work. And they're like, really? I'm like, I read every single book you have. And then I'll be like, this is so interesting, but I would never have that opportunity if it wasn't for podcasting. That's what opens the door for me. And that's one of the reasons. And then the nice thing is I always tell listeners, I'm like, the beautiful thing is I get to have a conversation with someone like yourself or others, and I get to pick their brain. But at the same token, you get the benefit of hearing the conversation so you can learn from it also and grab whatever it is that you need to grab from that.
Exactly. That's very true. Yes. I also like one of the gifts of podcasting too for me was I love to read. I don't read as much as I used to before, but I used to get like gifts of books from authors, for example, that come on the podcast, and I get opportunities to just read their books also, and broaden my knowledge also. And that way, I feel like that's a wonderful gift that keeps on giving. Basically, like the gift of sharing my knowledge with other people out there through podcasting, and also gaining knowledge by getting free books to read. Basically.
I love that. I'm all about that. So, Tobi, tell me, can you share with people how to connect with you, find you, listen to your podcast, and so much more?
Yes. So Mirror Talk Podcast is available on all platforms. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or we're also on Instagram at mirrortalk.podcast. And every of this information can be found on our website, which is www.mirrortalkpodcast.com. There you find all the show notes, all the links to all our podcast platforms, and also all our lists or to guests and everything that pertains to the podcast, the social links, everything could be found on www.mirrortalkpodcast.com.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you taking time to share with the listeners your journey, your story, and a little bit about how to get out of our own heads and know the art of meditation, the art of journaling, how to shift our perspective, and so much more. I appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vic. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I'm so grateful for what you do and everything that, you do to impact the world out there. Thank you,
brother. I greatly appreciate that.